Finally, ladies and gentlemen, from stepping up defense acquisitions to enhancing expenditure on border infrastructure, the front-footed military strategy has caught China off guard. Our forces are empowered with high-tech arsenal, morale is sky high, and they've been given a free hand to give the enemy a bloody nose if it attempts another misadventure.
लद्दाख से लेकर करगिल और सियाचिन तक, रेजांगला की बर्फीली चोटियां से लेकर गलवान घाटी के ठंडे पानी की धारा तक, हर चोटी, हर पहाड़, हर जर्रा जर्रा, हर कंकड़, पत्थर भारतीय सैनिकों के पराक्रम की गवाही देते हैं.
With that statement, Prime Minister drew the line. India's territorial integrity is supreme and no foreign power dare eye Indian land. During his surprise visit to Ladakh, Prime Minister had clear objectives before him: boost the morale of forces and send a strong message to China.
भारत आज जल, थल, नभ और अंतरिक्ष तक अगर अपनी ताकत बढ़ा रहा है तो उसके पीछे का लक्ष्य मानव कल्याण ही है. भारत आज आधुनिक अस्त्र शस्त्र का निर्माण कर रहा है.
Face-off in Galwan Valley was triggered by India's assertion over its territory and fast-tracking of key border infrastructure project, the DSDBO road. So it was significant that Prime Minister spoke of special focus to border infrastructure close to the LAC.
अब देश में बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर खर्च करीब 3 गुना कर दिया गया है. इससे बॉर्डर एरिया डेवलपमेंट और सीमा पर सड़कें, पुल बनाने का काम भी बहुत तेजी से हुआ है.
True to its word, the government recently approved acquisition of 21 MiG-29s as well as 12 Sukhoi 30 MKIs. And over 100 indigenously made Astra missiles that will add firepower to India's military arsenal. So Beijing should get the message: India is ready to counter any misadventure at the line of actual control. Let's debate.
At the start, I have Air Marshal P.K. Borbora, former Vice Chief of Air Staff. I'd like to start by asking former Chief of Army Staff, General J.J. Singh. General Singh, today we saw the Prime Minister being briefed by the Northern Army Commander, Lieutenant General Joshi, and 16 Corps Commander General Harinder Singh at Nimmo, Army Headquarters. Where do we stand today? And from what you are hearing about our building up our infrastructure and logistics, how does it compare to, say, when you were Army Chief?
Arnab, firstly, I would like to mention that today we are much stronger on the ground as also equipment-wise than we were in 2005 to 2007. That's the first point I want to make. Then I want to also mention that as far as India and China are concerned, in the battlefield Tibet, we are stronger than them in every way. Because one, we are closer to our hinterland. It's only about 1,000 kilometers to Delhi, whereas it is about 3,500 kilometers to Beijing for this battlefield. However much they might be stronger in the numbers, but how much can their force be brought to bear on us here? It's limited. Next thing, they don't have the experience of mountain warfare as much as our army has. and we are much better than them to handle high altitudes. And we are not like those soldiers who finish their 4 years and wave their hands in China and say we are going back to college or studies. We have a professional army. On top of everything else, we have a very positive, supportive Ladakhi population, which they are expressing, they would like to fight for our army, support us. Whereas on the Tibet side, the Tibetans are not very happy and they're not going to support, and the backyard may be burning, or we could play merry hell there if we want to. A war situation is not in China's favor at all.
What about our airstrike ability, Air Marshal Borbora? Where do we stand? Not just in the number of aircraft, but the type of aircraft, the deployment ability, etc., and where they are placed.
To be very honest and frank, being an Air Force personnel, retired of course, but I would say our planning has gone in for many, many years as to how to cater for a two-front war. And I think even with the constraints of the government in respect of money, we have balanced it very, very, very well indeed. Today we have about 12 or 14 airfields in the surrounding area of Ladakh which can do the job very well, whilst they have 2 or 3 in the immediate vicinity and 2 beyond it, which I have my personal doubts with whatever knowledge I have, that I am sorry they should not get into a warlike situation as respect that where the air comes into play. Because when air comes into play, they wouldn't know whether they're coming or going. And I'm very confident, I'm not talking like a stupid Indian just because I've got to support my nation. No. I'm talking like a military man who has indirectly or directly contributed to the strength that we have built up with the support of governments. And the recent government in power has definitely given us an impetus to be able to take on the Chinese in this area. And all I can say is, please don't get airborne China to try and match air power into air power. You will be a loser and you will have only either body bags back or nothing.
Interesting.
So let's not get into details.
No, of course not. We don't expect to discuss that on a television program. I just wanted a broad sense. Abhijit Singh is head of maritime policy at ORF, senior fellow there. In terms of our Navy strength, our naval assets, let's not get specific. How are we placed vis-a-vis China, Abhijit?
Look, as far as the Navy is concerned, we've been preparing for this phase of operations for at least 3 years now. In 2017, the Navy has started what it calls now the mission-based patrols along the choke points in the Indian Ocean region. And the real rationale for doing that was that the Navy was worried that the Chinese are somehow taking over its strategic space, its tactical space in the Indian Ocean region. So a lot of these deployments that we have done since 2017 have actually been to keep an eye on Chinese deployments in the region. Now what we are seeing is that there is a spiral of escalation that's building up, and I would agree with the general, as also the others on the panel, that war is going to be bad for everyone. But unlike land, where China seems to dominate in terms of infrastructure, in terms of terrain, as also troop strength, we dominate the seas, and we dominate the Eastern Indian Ocean, which is that critical space through which a lot of Chinese trade and oil shipments pass. So the fear, as far as China is concerned, they call it the Malacca dilemma, is that if the Chinese are going to somehow open up another front in the Indian Ocean, or for that matter, if India is going to open up another front in the Indian Ocean and try an interdiction strategy, when we are going to target either the Chinese warships or perhaps the Chinese cargo ships, the oil shipments in the Indian Ocean, then China might end up the loser. So I think we're better placed at sea. But I think what's going to be critical is ISR, surveillance and reconnaissance. And what is going to be critical is keeping an eye on the Indian Ocean rim states.
Yes.
In terms of what China is doing in countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar.
Yeah.
Let's remember they have the Belt and Road Initiative, and they already have a lot of infrastructure activity that is happening in these places. Now, some of this seems to be dual use. It can be it's commercial, but it can be quickly upgraded for military use. So I think as far as the Navy is concerned, we're in many ways ready. We know that China is going to find it hard to subdue us in the Indian Ocean region. But I would then go on to say that the Chinese are strong. We should not make the mistake of underestimating the Chinese Navy as the second most powerful Navy in the world.
No, of course not. Of course, there's no question of doing that. And I'm aware that we have also increased monitoring of vessels in the Indian Ocean region, especially since the Galwan incident in eastern Ladakh. Probal, fantastic book, Watershed 1967, must read for everyone. But the Chinese say that don't talk about 67, talk about 62. And I think that's absurd because 62 was 15 years after our independence. But still, let's look at the broad perspective. Strategically, how are we placed?
Yes. So that's a great question, Arnab. I think we have moved. The doctrine has moved. I think that is what is the fountainhead or the umbrella for all the policy and the tactics and the strategy. So the doctrine has moved from just being a doctrine of denial to being a doctrine of denial by punishment instead of doctrine of deterrence by denial. So from deterrence by denial to deterrence by punishment. And there's a paper that's been written about it. So which means that today, 67 kind of provided the template at a tactical level, but India as a doctrine adopts an approach which is not just to deny China territorial gains, but open up other fronts, impose costs on China, acquire vantage positions of negotiation at some point. So therein comes the role of internal and external balancing. And we've been talking about internal balancing in terms of improving infrastructure and ramping up our deterrence capabilities, opening up another front, etc. I would also take it to the side of external balancing, wherein now China has provided India with the option of co-opting other forces in the expanded theater. So that's where the maritime the theater comes in. And that's why signing up of mutual defense treaties with the US, which is again similar to what we had with Russia, with the Soviet Union pre-1971, is something that could possibly be an option that India would exercise at some point. And it also leads to smoother acquisition of defense equipment, manufacturing capabilities, interoperability between states. It also enables India to step up and play a greater role in the region. I think that is something that has changed. The doctrine has changed to enable external balancing with other powers, and that is where India plays a greater role today in terms of its defense strategy.
Yeah, and interestingly, what Abhijit mentioned before you about how we are very closely looking at the choke points, both in terms of trade and movement of naval assets. China is very, very vulnerable, in terms of, and that's why it's so aggressive over its position on the South China Sea. But it's beginning to look troubled. Now, General JJ, put on the strategic hat for me, and I want you and Air Marshal Barbara separately to give me a sense of how you think China is going to be looking or responding in the present situation. Will they escalate? Will they do more? What do you expect them to do?
Arnab, I would like to say that Xi Jinping, when he started off, appeared to be a leader who will take China forward. But today he has boxed himself into a corner. He is surrounded by all sorts of challenges and problems, both internally as also externally. Thirdly, the COVID vaccine now is emerging as if there is no doubt that it was an experiment of biological warfare, and that has affected the entire world, and including China. Now, to distract attention from all these things, he has strategically tried to divert attention in the Aksai Chin area. Please, I want to highlight that in Aksai Chin, the Chinese were never there. In fact, China was never India's neighbor. There was Tibet, and they usurped Tibet and said, we are going to liberate Tibet. Today, nobody is going to trust China. It signs an agreement today, it reneges on it tomorrow. So when agreements were signed 100 years ago, when the young husband expedition went up to Lhasa and put Tibet on its knees, it is the agreement signed then that Chumbi Valley will be part of India for 75 years. And somehow, again, the political games being played in London were what the Chinese exploited. Today also, they have developed an art how to put democracies into circles, and our politicians are falling into that trap. I want to request them to wake up and not to fight amongst themselves and lower the morale of the fighting forces as also of the nation.
But Air Marshal Borbora, leaders who are cornered can also be very impulsive, can't they? So let's game plan this. If if Xi Jinping were to get impulsive, reactionary, what could he do?
Well, all I can say, if China does that, all they're doing is digging a deeper grave for themselves. Look, in the last 48 hours, the world has changed and taken courage because of India's singular move against China, the second or third superpower, and for their own reasons and for international so-called reasons, they have come up in a manner that China doesn't know what to do. Like, I agree with General JJ, President Xi has just tied himself in knots, got into a box. He hasn't made a single public appearance, unlike our PM, who has gone all the way to Ladakh and back today. He doesn't know what to do. The Quad is one area, along with the Indian Navy, which can play hell into China's economy. We need to form a base in Andaman Nicobar Islands for Quad. Let's see what China does.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can promise you one thing, that that if Xi in his present form is to continue for another 2 years, I'm sorry, he will not exist. He will not exist because the internal politics, the population of China, the problems of West China, the Muslims there, and everywhere. I'm sorry, he's spread his tentacles too wide.
Yeah.
So even if he cut few tentacles here, there, it will bleed China.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, viewers, at the very end, I'll tell you, please note today at the end, one thing I'll tell you, please note, I personally believe China is on the verge of global isolation because lawmakers in Japan's ruling party, the Liberal Democratic Party, drafted a resolution calling for the cancellation of a state visit by Xi Jinping. And that's as insulting as it can get for China. So viewers, a lot of interesting developments on China. Thank you for watching our coverage today of Modi's visit to Ladakh. I shall see you on the Sunday debate, sharp at 12. Please be there. Good night. Goodbye.